Hi guys, welcome back to the Knitting Expat Podcast channel. My name is Mina and today I have a review video for you. I'm going to be reviewing Pom Pom Quaterly's Summer 2021 issue. It's titled Like a Bird, and so as the title might give away, this issue is bird themed. And Pom Pom, if you're not sure, are a UK based knitting and fibre magazine, and they are, I believe it's once every quarter, so 4 times a year it is published. So this is, like I said, the summer one. It includes they have articles, they have knitting patterns, there's one crochet pattern in this issue, and there's a few other fun little extras included as well. So just to preface this issue actually came out back in May of 2021. But I was contacted by Pom Pom about whether or not I'd be interested in reviewing it, and I said absolutely. But at the time, like literally when they contacted me, we were like 2 days away from moving house. So if anyone who's moved house, you probably understand that that was quite a busy period for us at that time. And yeah, so I said to them I'd love to, but it might take me a while. And they said that's fine. I will be honest, I did not think it would take me this long. So we are now at the end of July and I'm finally getting around to reviewing it. But thankfully we're still in summer, so hopefully this is all still somewhat relevant for you. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the patterns are available either in the physical magazine, which you can get from the Pom Pom website, and I will leave a link for that down below. And I think that some local yarn shops carry Pom Pom magazine, like the physical books as well. So you can always check with your local yarn shop if they stock it. And or you can order it online. Like I said, I'll have the link below to their website, and it's also available as a digital it's like PDF of the magazine through Ravelry, and again from their website as well. So yeah, I hope that will it's all the information there. Now I can't remember off the top of my head, and I forgot to look it up before I sat down to do this review, is whether or not you can buy the patterns in there individually, because like I said, there's one crochet pattern in this whole book, so you might not want to buy the whole book just for one pattern, but if you're interested in that pattern, I think you can buy it individually online, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So I will have put it up on the screen hopefully while I'm talking, once I've had a chance to look it up while I'm editing. Anyway, so let's just go through the book. So first thing, when you open up, you have your index page with all the different names of the patterns and some of their other articles and things they have included. So we start with a letter from the editor, or editors in this case, Megan and Lydia. And they kind of just, I'm not going to read it out, but they basically touch on a lot of things that have been going on in terms of current affairs, how everyone's feeling right now post-COVID, like towards the end of COVID, and things opening up again, and just like the lessons have been learnt from, you know, lockdown and things like that. And so it just sort of talk about where the inspiration for the bird theme came from. And then we're going to jump straight into the first of, I think it's 10 patterns in this book. There's quite a few patterns in here. So the first one, sorry, I've just made some notes from the actual pattern information about sizing and stuff that I wanted to go over. So the first part of the book, it just goes through all the different patterns and the inspiration behind them, etc. But then further at the back of the book, you have the actual written out pattern information. Now I'm not going to be showing those pages in much detail because that includes the paid patterns, but I just wanted to pull out the pertinent information for like sizing and stuff like that to talk about when we go over each one. So the first pattern is Rifle by Carly Olfert, and they used a Pearl Soho yarn. And as it says here, the name Rifle is an ode to birds' distinctive skyward formations. So the design, and it's a bit hard to see, but it has like the distinct lines. If you think about birds flying in the sky, you think of the flying V. So it has that sort of shape in the actual pattern, and you've got the shape in the back of the top and the front as well. That V shape is very prominent in the design of this tank top, as it were. And it's inspired by the designer lives in British Columbia, and there's a bird sanctuary nearby, near to where she is, called the Rifle Migratory Bird Sanctuary, and that's where the name for the top came from. Now this top comes in 9 different sizes, ranging from 80 centimeters to 156 centimeter chest circumference, which is about 31.5 inches to 61.5 inches, and it's intended to be worn with 1.5 to 3 inches of positive ease. So it's a pretty decent size range, and yeah, looks like a pretty fun sort of summer top that probably won't take a huge amount of time to knit. I think it's out of fingering weight yarn. It's the one thing I forgot to note down was the yarn weights that are used for each one, but it has a beautiful open back to the back of this top. Now this isn't a shape and style that I would personally wear, but I think it's beautiful. It's just not my personal style, but I do appreciate how pretty it is. Then the second pattern we have is, I'm not sure how it's supposed to be pronounced, but it's based on the Latin word for phoenix. So I'm not sure if it's pronounced phoenix or phoenix, but this is designed by Sandra Gutierrez. I'm sorry if I butchered that name. This is the one and only crochet pattern in the magazine this month, on this issue, and it's actually a really beautiful shape. I really love the different directions of the lines. So you have like the sort of mountain peak type diagonal lines, and then you have the vertical lines over the bust area. It's just a really interesting design style, and again with like the scoop neck at the back and the front. This is more of a style that I would probably pick. I personally just prefer a scoop neck, just personal preference. This one also comes in 9 sizes, ranging from 72 centimeters to 150 centimeter chest circumference, 24.25 inch to 59 inch circumference, and this one's intended to be worn with around 1 to 4 inches of negative ease. So this one's, I think it's the only pattern in here designed for negative ease other than the sock pattern. So this one, this pattern was inspired by phoenixes, and you know how birds have various meanings through different cultures. For example, hummingbirds symbolize paradise, dove has become a symbol of peace, owls can stand for wisdom, etc., etc. And so the phoenix over the years has, you know, represented rebirth and, you know, renewal and things like that. So that was her inspiration for this particular design. Then next up we have the Lodestar sweater by Kirsten Rovetta. I'm again sorry if I've mispronounced that one. And this one's knit out of a DK weight yarn and inspired by navigational constellations, which are referred to as lodestars. And again, this is a really beautiful, so it's sort of like a simple looking silhouette, with all the detail being around the shoulder and collar area with this lovely lace detail. And then you've got a bit of a puff sleeve around the cuffs, which is again a really fun little detail that just adds something to the overall look, and it gives it a very sort of sophisticated sort of silhouette overall, but without it being overly fussy, if that makes sense. So this one comes in 9 sizes as well, 78.5 centimeters to 157.5 centimeters in circumference, which is 31 to 62 inches in circumference, and this one is intended to be worn with up to 3 inches of positive ease. And again, this is inspired by the birds, you know, birds' natural ability for navigation, and you know how as people we used to use like stars and constellations to navigate on water and things like that. So it's a very interesting sort of design concept, and I like really love how it looks from the back. Like this is one I could see as being something that I would like to add to my wardrobe at some point. As a designer myself, I have very little time for knitting other people's designs, but this is definitely one that I like. And from the looks of it, I think this is a sort of 3/4 length sweater based on the length of the sleeve. A 3/4 sleeve length sweater, sorry. But you could easily adjust that. I always think sleeve lengths are a really simple adjustment with sweater knitting. And then the next pattern we have is the Ardea, and this is an interesting construction because it's actually knit sideways. So it's knit like in this sort of direction, up and down, like your rows are going up and down. And it's got like a beautiful like range of different stitch patterns. So this would be a great one for like just practicing different stitches and stitch patterns. And Ardea is the name of great herons and egrets. So it's inspired by the mating dances of the great blue heron, which is where the inspiration for the various stitch patterns came from. It's a boxy cropped sweater, and the pattern is written for 2 various lengths. Like I said, because this pattern is knit from side to side, it's not knit top to bottom or bottom to top. Adjusting the length of the body is going to be very tricky. So there's 2 length options. This is the shorter option, and then I think the longer option is somewhere around 4 or 5 inches longer. I'm not sure. It's a slightly it varies size by size a little bit. There is a schematic at the back, so you can easily figure that out. Personally, what I would do, like, I would not wear something this cropped. Again, personal choice, personal preference. What I would do is I would modify slightly by picking the longer size and then doing a longer ribbing at the bottom, because I'm quite a tall person. So even the longer size in the book, in the pattern, is probably going to be pretty cropped on me. And even by the estimated, what I've just briefly looked at with the schematic, I think the longer size from underarm to hem is only about 11 inches for most of the sizes. So that's still going to be a pretty cropped sweater. So if you wanted it to be longer and you didn't like it, but you like the pattern, one thing you could do is just knit this bottom ribbing, because that's picked up in the round and then knit down. So what I would do there is make that ribbing longer to adjust the length that way, rather than trying to adjust the length of the knitting, because that can get a little bit tricky. That's just a simple modification that I thought I would mention, because I know not everyone enjoys super cropped sweaters, but you might enjoy the pattern and want to find a way of making it more wearable necessarily, that might be more wearable for you. But equally, for those who do love cropped sweaters, this is a lovely one, and it would probably be a fairly quick knit once you get into the rhythm of it. And the sizing for this one actually has 10 sizes for chest circumference, ranging from 77.5 centimeter to 157.5 centimeter. It comes in 2 lengths, like I mentioned, and in inches, it would be 30.5 inches up to 62 inches in circumference. And again, this is intended to be worn with about up to 3.5 inches of positive ease. So this is the Ardea sweater. Oh, I forgot to mention the name of the designer. This is by, I have no idea how to pronounce this. I'm so sorry. Ksenia Nadyon. I'm so sorry. I have no idea where to begin with pronouncing this. But there it is on the screen. So hopefully, I'm sorry for butchering names. I'm really bad with name pronunciations. Okay, then next up we have the one and only sock pattern in this book. Magazine, sorry, I keep saying book. It is a bit like a book. This one is by Alison Lutz, and it's a colourwork pattern. It comes in 4 sizes, 18, 20.5, 23, 25.5 centimetres, or 7, 8, 9, or 10 inches in circumference. Intended to be worn with 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of negative ease. Personally, for socks, especially around the foot, I like having my socks have more negative ease than that, but I understand because it is a colourwork sock, you don't want it to have too much negative ease. However, I would say, again, because it is a colourwork sock, it would have been nice to have seen more size options, because for some people this might not be enough of a circumference, especially with colourwork, because it doesn't have as much stretch to actually be able to get it over your foot and ankle. I know I would probably struggle to get this over my foot if that was the actual finished size I was going for, or going for this sort of fit. But yeah, again, I don't knit colourwork socks because I do end up having trouble getting the cuffs over my ankles, but that's probably more to do with my colour work gauge than anything else. For those that it works for, then it's great. And the good thing about this design is the foot of the sock is plain. There's no colour work on the foot. So you could always do the cuff and the leg in the larger size and then decrease down a few extra stitches if you like to have a tighter fit on the foot. So this one was inspired by woodpeckers. The Picardy, again, not sure how to pronounce that, is inspired by woodpeckers and the drumming they do into the woods. So it's actually inspired by the male downy woodpecker's distinctive plumage. So you can get the sort of like feather look in the colour work there. And then the next one is, this is actually probably my favourite design in the whole magazine, is the Passerine by Chloe Elizabeth Birch. And again, it's a very simple sweater, stockinette body, but you just have this beautiful garter stitch detail on the sleeves, which is meant to be reminiscent of like a bird's feather. So again, it's a 3/4 length sleeve. It's knit bottom up, and it features, like I said, an outline of an enlarged feather on both sleeves, and it's just a really beautiful design feature. And I just really love it. It just looks really squishy, and this is definitely one, again, that I would, if I had the time, I would probably pick this pattern to knit first. This one comes in 9 sizes, ranging from 91 centimeters to 167 centimeters in circumference. That ranges from 36 to 66 inches, and it's intended to be worn with 2 to 6 inches of positive ease. That's the Passerine. Did I mention the designer? Yes, Chloe Elizabeth Birch. The next one we have is Soul Bird, and this is an all-over lace top with a drop sleeve feature. This one comes in 9 sizes, 96 to 172 centimeters, or 37 3/4 to 67 3/4 inches. Intended to be worn with anything from 0 to 8 inches of positive ease. So that's a nice range, and allows you to sort of like pick where your comfort level is with ease. And this design, this lace design, is inspired by the feathers of a peacock, which I think is really quite fun, and a really fun inspiration to pull from. And if you're new to lace, I think this is probably a really good beginner's lace project, because it's the same all over. Most of the body is knit in the round. The shoulders area is knit flat, and then the tops are seamed together, and then you pick up and you do the ribbing on around the sleeve armholes. So it's a very simple construction. I don't believe there's any shaping in the sides and everything, so it's a fairly boxy construction, which again is great for like summertime as like a layering piece. And yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, is this knit out of DK? Oh, sorry, it's a bit windy. Can't remember if this is, I think this is DK yarn, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, DK weight cotton linen blend, that's what it was. Next up we have the one and only shawl design in this magazine. Sorry, the wind's blowing, and the roof hatch in my office keeps flapping around, so there's not much I can do about that, I'm afraid. So hopefully that stops. This just comes in 1 size. It's a shawl, and it's a really long sort of shawl. It's more like a wrap type construction. It's like quite skinny but very long, and it's called Avifauna and designed by Kirsten Rovetta again. I believe that's the same designer we had earlier. And Avifauna means the bird life specific to a particular region. So again, that was the inspiration for it. And as she says here, not all birds can fly, but they do all have wings. And so here's your chance to knit your own. She designed this shawl based on folkloric versions of people turning into birds. So that's just a really fun bit of inspiration there for that one. And the final design we have is probably what I would say probably technically one of the more advanced patterns in this magazine, which it might not look like it at first, but there's, you know, changing of colors involved. There's actually intarsia involved on this part on the sides when you're knitting it in the round. So there's definitely some more advanced techniques, but it's a fairly simple and plain design overall, so it allows you to focus on those more advanced techniques and really get a chance to get to grips with them, which I think is a really good idea. So the Huppo is designed by Valerie Rachel. It comes in 10 sizes, 89 centimeters to 178 centimeters circumference, or 35 inches to 70 inches, intended to be worn with 3 to 6 inches of positive ease. And it's inspired by the Huppo bird, which has a pink body, and their wings and tails are accented with black and white stripes. So you can really see that inspiration coming through very literally in the finished garment. And again, like I said, it has a very interesting construction, so if it's not something you've tried before, it's definitely worth looking at. And that's it for the patterns. And then we've got some adverts and stuff, and then we have our the article, the main article that's in here, and it was written by Solène Leroux, who talks about you know, her life and dealing with creativity and her business and things during lockdown in Paris. And this illustration is gorgeous. The illustration is by Melissa Bernabeau, I think that's how you pronounce it, but it's beautiful. I'm not going to go over in detail like the contents of the article. I'll leave that for you to read. But one thing I liked here is this editor's note where in Solène's story she mentions about her retreats that she does, and so they actually asked her further information about how she approaches her retreats and stuff like that, because retreats do have a reputation for being fairly exclusive, and they can tend to be quite expensive sometimes, especially in-person retreats. So it can be quite unaffordable or unattainable for certain people. So she talks about how she tries to create a safe knitting space for all different people, and she has a bunch of like free things that she does as well. And her retreats have been online this last year, so again it makes it more approachable for people who might not be able to travel otherwise. So it's just really interesting that this little added note was added in, that they took note of that and they addressed it and included it as well. Then the next thing I wanted to talk about, they also have a really fun, like an extra type of project that's not knitting or crochet. And so here they've got a project for a ruffled feathers, sunglasses and mask chain. So you could either use it for sunglasses or for your mask if you're wearing them. And so it goes through step by step all the instructions on how to do that and create the little tassels and things, which I thought was really fun. And this is probably my favorite part in this whole magazine, is this page here, because this is something I've been a huge proponent of in my own designs, and when I'm teaching people, when I'm talking to people about knitting and picking yarn for patterns, etc. Like, I feel so strongly about this particular thing they talk about here. And what they say here, and I will read out some of it for you, it says, "The yarns featured in this issue work brilliantly for their respective patterns, and we love them, but they are not the only options," and that's key. "We frequently substitute yarns when making patterns for ourselves and encourage you to try other options, especially yarns already in your stash. There can be lots of reasons for using a different yarn to the one listed in the pattern. Some yarns aren't easy to obtain, either because they're dyed or produced in very small batches, or perhaps because they aren't local to you. Budget considerations are also important, as many yarns are not financially accessible to every knitter who wants to make a pattern. Substitutions can be daunting, but if you keep the following two things in mind, you'll be on the right track." So the one thing they talk about is the ratio of yarn ball length to the weight of the yarn. So they mean basically the number of meters or yards per gram or ounce. And if your yarn's ratio is similar to that of the yarn called for in the pattern, your yarn will usually be the right thickness to get gauge. So if you're, for example, if you're substituting a yarn that's 400 yards per 100 grams, and you have a yarn that's 400 yards to 100 grams that you want to use in its place of a different company or different brand, then you're probably going to be all right. The other thing the second point is yarn characteristics. So choose an alternative with similar features to the yarn listed in the pattern. So check if drapey fibers like silk or alpaca are involved, or more structured wools. That's also really important. And also how it's spun can be important as well, whether it's elastic or fuzzy or inelastic, etc. So they are now listing more specific yardage requirements within their patterns to help you decide exactly how much of an alternative yarn you will need. And you have any doubts when substituting, you can always ask them for help. They also encourage you to engage with the expertise of your local yarn shop. So I absolutely love this being included. I don't know if this is a new feature for their magazine or if this is something they plan on including going forward in each issue. This is actually my first time looking at a Pom Pom magazine in person in detail. So I absolutely love this. This is something I talk about all the time, something I encourage people to do all the time. Whenever I have someone doing any test knitting for me, my first thing is always like, please use yarn you already have before you decide to go out and buy yarn. You know, you don't feel any pressure to have to go buy yarn or to use the exact same yarn that I used when you're knitting my patterns. Like, I really feel strongly about that. So I'm really glad they talk about that here. Okay, and sorry, I'll get off my soapbox now because I just feel really passionately about that people don't have to get so hung up on using the exact same yarns used in a pattern to knit their versions. That's not to say you shouldn't or that you can't. Of course you can if you want to, but don't feel like if you can't use that yarn that you then can't knit that pattern, if that makes sense. Okay, I'll move on now. They have a section here with abbreviations, including some links to videos showing specific techniques, which is nice to see. And then we get to the actual pattern information. I'm going to flip through this quickly, and you can see more photos, more schematics, which are quite pretty. The only, I guess, criticism that I would have, for example, and I'll show you on the last one maybe, is with how they give the schematic information per se. So I would personally, let me just get to, okay, just looking here, just cover up that page, I'll cover up here. So this is where you have all the schematic information, all the numbers that relate to this schematic down here. Personally, just because of how I read and interpret information, this is all fine, but when you first just look at it, it's really hard to figure out which is your size. You'll have to go there and like count each of them to like get to the size that you're knitting, and it's just like a field of numbers. I personally think it would have been better and maybe clearer to the knitter who's working from these patterns to have this information in like a table format. And it would be easier to find what information you're looking for if it's tabulated rather than just written out line by line like this. Like I said, I'm glad the information is there, obviously, and it's not impossible to figure it out. You can just use a pencil or something to circle the numbers that are relevant to you so you can refer back to it easier. But I just think it would be easier at first glance, like when you're looking at a pattern quickly, to be like, oh, this column is the column relevant to the size that I'm knitting, so I can quickly check those numbers without constantly having to keep counting to find where I'm at on each line, sort of thing. But there again, like I said, that's a personal preference, design, like layout decision thing that I personally would do, but this is how they've chosen to display that information. Okay, and then at the very end here, they also include a recipe in each of their issues, which I think is a very fun idea, kind of like taking that creativity beyond just knitting and crochet. And this time they have a pandan coconut milk loaf. So there's instructions on how to make the dough, the crumb, and then the filling, the pandan custard filling, which I think is really fun. And then finally at the end here they have a bit of information, like a paragraph about each of the designers that are featured in this issue, and they refer to them this time as the bird watchers, which I thought was really quite cute. And yeah, so there's a little bit about each of the designers in there, and at the very end they have some information about the different companies that provided yarn support, and they refer to those as nesting materials, which again I thought was very cute, keeping it all within the bird theme for this issue. Okay, so that's just a general overview and a bit of a look through what's included in this issue's magazine, my thoughts on some of the designs, and in general I think it's a beautiful issue, some really knittable patterns in there. A lot of them I think are very sort of like advanced beginner friendly, as it were. If you're an adventurous beginner, I think you'd have a great time with some of these designs, and there's definitely some things in there for more advanced knitters to really sink their teeth into, maybe try out some new techniques. Definitely a lot of fun to be had with this issue. So thank you again to Pom Pom for sending me this magazine to review, and yeah, and I hope you enjoy it. I will have links down below to where you can purchase Pom Pom online. They are not affiliate links. I am not getting paid in any way to make this video. Yeah, I was just sent the magazine for the review, and yeah, so I just want to say thank you again to Pom Pom for that, and I will see you guys in a video again soon. Hopefully I'll be back next week with a podcast episode, and I will see you guys then. All right, bye.